Augmented reality, from its name, in principle, you are overlaying a specific design or a specific conceptual design based on an existing topo surface or an existing atmosphere. We started to see the usage mainly on two fronts. The first one is mainly on the design development team from a client perspective. So basically at an earlier, way earlier stage of the design, they can oversee how this new design is going to interact with the new surface, with the existing site conditions. Basically, they can make a lot of faster decision making, whether this is the right orientation of the building, what is the right view, how they can maximize the best utilization of the existing landscape using the AR technology. And also we started to see a certain usages on the sales and the marketing department. With those tools, basically, the end user, the customer, you can engage that level of experience with the design. So basically, the client can, or the potential buyer can go to the existing site, use the AR tools in order to visualize how this new space is going to interact with this environment. And also the usage here, there's a lot. We can figure out different design options, how the client, how the market is going to interact with those. It helps us to visualize more kind of the what-if scenarios. What happens if we increase the size of the openings? What happens if we change this type of specific finishes? So in this case, the end user can actually visualize this specific type of a design change, assess its impact, and also understand how this will be incorporated with the existing surfaces. This is really where augmented reality will push that level of coordination. Yeah. There's a lot of awareness now, sessions that happening from the digital transformation teams, whether they are separate consultants or the client themselves. They started to see in this competitive environment how they can utilize this technology more in order to attract more customers and use it. Also, from a perspective of something Paul just mentioned, the tool now is kind of cheap to assess. You just do it setup once. Basically, we started to see the majority of the designers are preparing the models in 3D. So this means also the information is available and it can easily incorporate it. It's not rocket science now anymore. You just do a setup once. And the main kind of like setup where people really want to see the added value is to allow the client to start using it, to start testing it, implementation, see what kind of feedback they're receiving from their potential buyers. And obviously, you know, the software itself will provide a lot of added value from that perspective. This is where we're going to see more widespread of this technology.
(4D) or construction scheduling, as we would refer to, where you're adding this element of time to visualize your project is absolutely, I think it's becoming a critical tool now that pretty much most, maybe not so much consultants, but absolutely contractors are adopting. We're finding that what was a tool that was originally being used, excuse me, for just creating some nice animations that you might even use from a sales point of view, just to look good and show someone how you might build their project. That's now developed into so much more, and it's one of these instances where a technology has been adopted and you start to use it more and more, and you start to collate more of this data that we're all talking about. But then what happens is you find other things to do with this data. You find more and more possibilities to use this, use this tool for. I mean, just for example, it's, again, initially monitoring and reporting the as-built status of your project. We were talking there about augmented reality. That's become a big part of visualizing a 4D construction scheduling, the schedule in your project. We're now using it to control site deliveries and site logistics. And that's very important if you're actually on a site that's very constrained and it doesn't have areas to allow for material storage. You really have to have things just arriving on site at exactly the right time to be installed. So now these products are starting to be used for that. They're starting to be used for health and safety. aspects, because you've got all this information, not just about what you're building, but the site around it in general and what's happening in that site over time. You can start to look in health and safety requirements. Where do people need to be? Where does material need to be? And again, that's relevant in our current environment as well. And then another big one is that you can make that information now available in mobile devices on site, and that lets people make decisions quite live in terms of where they are on the site. They can actually review the information. But the big thing I want to highlight, I would say, is that a lot of people think that this is a tool that just magically happens, but you need to have certain things in place really in order to be able to do this kind of work. And there's two key components to this in my mind. The first one is you need that federated, multidisciplinary, coordinated model. And then you need to couple that with your project planning, your project plan for how you're going to build your project. And there's a big misconception that you just magically take these two elements, put them together, press a button, and hey presto, you have your fantastically constructed schedule. But the reality is that that's not the case. One is you need to make sure that the right data is in both of those items to begin with. And the other one is that we're actually finding that there's almost a new role or a new skill set being created by the people who are now able to manipulate this. So it's a bit about understanding how the model was created in the first place, and it's a lot about understanding how that marries with the project plan to begin with. So it's become quite a skill set in its own. But there's one thing for sure, it's here to stay. And every time I speak to someone or I'm looking at a project where it's involved, I'm always surprised by the new uses that people are coming up with for this technology. So I would say it's absolutely now, I would say it's probably on most tier 1 type contractor sites.